Okay, we're going to go over how to create some requests from your client. I think we went over a little bit in one of the other videos on how to send a request, which is okay. And what we have here is just I created a method called test create user that can be used by a button. And in this case, I'm just sending a new request for create user. But if we look at our server, create user is supposed to have some parameters within it. So the clients are supposed to send some parameters. Now, something that I need to do is add parameters to this request. So that should be easy enough. So I should go request ret, which is what I called my request object here. Oh wait, no, that's not my request object, sorry. New request in this case, and then I can go to add param. And if you notice, add param is going to take two things. It's going to take a string, which is the key, and then another string, which is a value. The first key is just going to be the parameter name. So in this case, I want to send a username param. So then I'll go cis constants dot username param. That's my key, and then my value, let's say that this user is going to be called just ed. And then I can do the same thing for new request.add param, but this time for an ID. And again, cis constants.id. This was going to be a user ID param, and be careful not to use the item ID param. And then here I'm just gonna say 999 and new request dot add param, and then cis constants, and then year level, and I'm gonna call this year 12. Now again, you don't want to copy this directly. This is just an example. You might want to do different things with yours, and absolutely you're not going to do this in the end. I'm just going to do this for an example right now, and then I'm going to show you exactly what you should be doing. You should be getting input from the user. So I can do this. I can add some parameters. Those parameters are going to travel through the internet. I'm going to open up my emulator, and then this create user button is actually going to send a message. It's going then to send it over to somewhere in the internet, and then that's going to come back. Now, one of the things that might happen is that doesn't seem like anything, like nothing worked. In this case, it doesn't seem like this all worked. So I need to make sure that I do something with the return. I'm going to print this return, and because nothing happened, perhaps printing this return will tell me a little bit about what happened. So, okay, return from server. And I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to run it again. It should happen pretty quickly, and then I will click create user again, and then at some point, let's see if we get a return from the server, and it doesn't quite show that I'm. So a few things that I would like to debug. I will click on my create user and just make sure that this is okay. So this should have some on click to it. This on click is test create user, perfect. And then I should then go ahead, go back to my main activity, and I'm going to just add another print statement here. So I'm just showing you some debugging techniques of what I would do if this wasn't working for me. So why am I going to put it outside the try? Well, I'm just going to, as soon as I click that button, this should print. So I'm just going to say button clicked for create user, and I should be able to see this printout. If I don't see that printout, then there's something wrong with my button. If I do see that printout, my button's okay, and there's something wrong with the request. So I'm going to click create user. You can see that system.out here button clicked for user, and then nothing happens. So perhaps an error is coming back. I am going to print out an error here, see if we're catching something, error from server, and then I'm going to just say error to string. I'm going to stop it, and then I'm going to run it back again. I'm going to click on create user, and at some point, let's see if I get system.error from server. It says file not found exception, and then I'm going here, and it's going, well, it's giving me back it's giving me back the URL, or really the request that it created with ngrok and so on. So let me double check something. Maybe my ngrok here is not the same, and it looks like it's not the same. That's certainly something that I should be changing every time that I start this up. Perfect. So I did do that on purpose just to show you how you can debug something. And let's see, this should work now. I'll click create here, create, and now I get success from server. That means that I was able to create a user, and you notice that my server here just received ed999A and year 12, which is what I have, what I sent over. And that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. But again, I don't actually just want to create the same user over and over and over again. I want to be able to create whatever user information that I get from the UI. So I'm going to go here to my UI, and I'm going to add some plain text. I'm going to add 3 of them in this case because I'm going to use 3 of them. I'm going to need 3 pieces of information. I'm going to then actually, let me do one at a time. Otherwise, this will be pretty messy. So I will go center here, and I'm going to constrained to this user right here. And perhaps I'm going to add, I don't know, 16 padding. And then because I constrained it now vertically, now I'm going to constrain it horizontally in parent. And now it's just going to be pretty centered. And I'm going to do the same thing for this one. I'm going to constrain this one to the bottom. I'm going to use 16. Maybe you want to use some more. And then I'm going to center it here horizontally in parent. And finally, I'm going to add one more. Oh, not that one. There you go. I'm going to add this one. 16, and then center it here in the parent. Perfect. I'm going to call it different things. The top one, let's say I'm going to need username, so I'm just going to add name to this text. And perhaps you don't want to erase this every time, you just want to put a hint. So add name, and this is going to disappear, and it's going to be grayed out every time that I use it. And then I'm going to set this to ID, add name, edit text. Perfect. And then I'm just going to click refactor there. Then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do the same for this one. I'm going to add a hint, and then it's going to be user ID, add ID for the hint, and I'm going to remove the text, and then I'm going to give it a new ID. So add ID, edit text. And even though this one's called a plain text, when you drag it in, like this over here says plain text, this is really not, it's called an edit text, not an plain text. I'm not sure why they call it that there. I'm going to remove the name here finally, and then I'm going to do add year level as a hint, and then I'm just going to call it level edit text and make sure that it's spelled correctly, and then I click refactor and I'm good to go. There's going to be some comments here that I'm going to have to fix. I can just click fix here. Items height is 45. Consider making the height touch target 48. So I'm just going to, sure. It's telling me that I need to make these edit text a little bit bigger, otherwise it's kind of hard to click on them. Fair enough. And now that I have these 3, I'm going to go back here to main activity, and I'm going to add them. So pretty quickly, edit text, and then the first one's going to be name input perhaps. The other one is going to be edit text ID input and edit text year level input. Perfect. Here in onCreate, which is pretty much the thing that runs initially, I'm going to have to get these from the layout. So to be able to get them from the layout, I am going to say r dot layout dot layout dot edit text. So I need to like cast it as an edit text. And then let's say that I forget. Then this happens all the time. R dot whatnot. The best thing that I can do is just open up Google and say add edit text Android activity. Easy enough. I'll be able to find some documentation, or I can find a Stack Overflow link. Usually, here we go. It tells me that I'm creating a new edit text, not quite what I want. Add edit text programmatically. I'm just going to go to the Android developers one and then look at what they have. And then here, not so much. Working with edit text. Perhaps now we have a guide that tells you how to use edit text. And then we have find view by ID, of course. Find view by ID r dot, and then we're gonna do ID, and then dot. This is name, add name, edit text. Perfect. And then I can do the other ones, which is ID input equals, cast it as an edit text. We're going to talk a little bit about what that means. r.id, and then this is add ID edit text. And finally, we're going to have year level input equals edit text find view by RID level edit text. Perfect. Now that I have those three, the user will be able to type into them, and to be able to get their input, I'm going to create some variables here. So I'm going to say username input as a string is going to be name input dot get text dot toString. Then I'm going to do the same thing for ID, user ID input, ID input dot get text dot toString, and finally we have year level input user year input equals year level input dot get text dot toString. Okay, now I have those. I'm going to get rid of these ones, and I'm just going to use the new variables that I'm going to have to send some parameters. User year input. Now that I have those, I'll be able to send some requests. I'll be able to get those requests back. I know that my connections are working. I know that my inputs are working. I'm going to launch this. This looks pretty cool. Notice that I don't have to remove anything anymore. So I'm going to call this Edwin. His ID is going to be 888-000A. And then finally the year level is going to be year 13. I'm going to click create user. This is going to go over to the network. Notice that it came in through the server. The server was able to read it. The server returned success, and I now have a user in my server, and all is well. For all the other things that you need to do for this app, you're going to add some inputs like this to ask the user for what they need. You should be good to go. That's it.